start. I think probably most people are back at their desks now. So we're up to question 8 on the agenda. What I intend to do is take question 8, 9 and 10 together. They all relate to what they call the SAMDEF sites, rather than trying to split it out. So as we go around the table, I'm happy to take comments on all 3 or just one of them if that's what you want to do. What I intend to do is, first of all, question 8. Still and I have got quite a lot of questions for the council, so we'll go through those first and ask the sort of questions we've got, and that might help as well. Some other people in the room might have similar concerns or questions, and so the answers from the council might help with that. First of all, it's probably just worth pointing out there are some additional modifications the council have published, and they show some amendments to Appendix 2 of the plan. They effectively just add some more detailed, aren't they? They carry through some more information from the SAMDEF plan. So nothing particularly groundbreaking or massive, but it's probably just worth pointing that out. So in terms of questions, so the first question we have is, I'll just let some people sit down. So if the policies that allocate from the SAMDEF plan are carried forward into this plan, so this plan seems to have a list of sites, but those sites have an allocations policy in the SAMDEF site plan, which would effectively fall away when it's superseded. It's what underpins that list of sites and gives them their status as an allocation. I don't know, does that make sense? Because they've got policies like things like which are also, you've got a new plan which seem to underpin these allocations.
Okay, well I'll start. I think, as we mentioned the other day, the local plan review is seeking to retain those safe sites because it's a partial review of the local plan. I think that point was established on the first hearing session, wasn't it? So we would continue to make reference with that. Clearly, as we said, they will continue to hold their weight as part of the development plan, assuming this plan is agreed and adopted. So that's our position, the starting position on that. Obviously, you probably want to dig into that a bit more, but that's our starting position.
Yeah, I thought so. Just a list of sites with the policy will disappear as part of that superseding process. It's we want to make sure that if they stay as a list of sites in the plan, then you've got something that underpins them when you come to a Section 78 process.
I think the point you're raising is what was it in the SAMDEV that formally allocated those sites?
That's the way of putting it, yes.
And you're sort of asking, don't you really need to say that as well to ensure that they remain allocated?
Yes, we're seeking to make sure that what in just listing these sites in the rug from India into
I've got the message.
Yes.
Because, yes, well, I won't speculate, but I have got the message, and I think we can yes, we'll have to think about that.
I think we need some further what the mechanism is, and whether we need to say a little bit more of the SAMDEF
yes.
to do that. But when we've tried to get it ourselves, how we would go about it, it's not that straightforward, I don't think, but clearly it's probably easier for you to do it because you're more familiar with the SAMDEF plan.
I'll make a note in red, which is what I do when there's something to do.
Thank you. So I think that's something, that's something we can address in our lecture as well, if it's something that, clearly it's something that needs some thinking about because it's quite an important point. What was the next question? So some of the points raised by people in the room and wider people has questioned about the deliverability of the SAMDEV sites in the appendix, and if they've not come forward previously, is there not a risk that they won't deliver in the future? Have the council undertaken some sort of assessment as part of this review?
We consider that developability on a basis within our supply. The most recent fact supply, I can give you a reference. It's GC4 Jet. There's a 15 still each category. One of those appendices is specifically applications, and it goes through and looks at the availability, achievability, viability, and based on those conclusions indicates when we anticipate them coming forward within the plan period to 2038. So yeah, that's been specifically considered and reflected upon, and that informs our approach to the sites.
Thank you, that's helpful. Because as you realise, these things are formed in this appendix, whereas the others are. So at the latter end of the examination, we start to look at deliverability and all that sort of thing. But these we can't do that. So the strategy of relying on the SAMDEV sites and the soundness. People have raised concerns about that was based on a rural strategy, and I think you've addressed that in some of your responses to various correspondence with us, and that we've now got an urban focus strategy. Therefore, is it right that they should be just rolled forward? I don't really want to just address that point here.
Yes, happy to, Mrs. Crosby. I think specifically question 5, to question 5. It looks at the proposed state and provide for geographical distribution, which in a nutshell indicates that 85% of the proposed state allocations are located within proposed areas. A further 14% are located within proposed community hubs or clusters, which is a sort of focus for rural development, and about 0.68% is within the rural area. So we feel that reflects the urban focus within the spatial strategy.
Thank you. I'll give everyone the opportunity to comment this as we go around, but it's just worth going through some of these points first. So it kind of relates to the essay this a little bit, but obviously the sites were assessed some years ago now, so to take the point that when you first did the review, the sites were fairly recently, in a fairly recently adopted plan, had fairly recently been through an essay process and things. Because of the time it takes to deal with a local plan to submission, that time frame's obviously widened. So it's some time ago that now these were essayed, and there's a question mark over whether there would have been more reasonably alternative sites had we thrown this bag of sites into the mix for this plan, if you see what I mean.
I think it's important to prepare the local plan before you. Which the process late 2016, early 2017, been recently adopted, was adopted in December 2015, so approximately a year before the review commenced. We're seeking to implement the SAP. I think we've been very effective in implementing that look at the process that's been made, the applications, and I think that at least as part, because we provide certainty about status. And I think that is important because we are, as I said, implementing that sometimes taking a review, so it's important for us to provide that certainty. And if you look at the information before, so progress has been made on the process, and significant proportion of people we are
asking for question.
So the other point, I don't know whether this is a statement or a question really, but as we've explained, the sites are not before us, so we can't consider them in the 5-year supply discussion. So when we come to look at 5-year supply, it's going to be difficult to assess whether the plan provides a 5-year housing supply, because we can't assess those sites that are not in the plan, if that makes sense.
I think that the true question should be whether on adoption of the plan there will be a 5-year land supply. And when you're considering that, you will consider the likely delivery over the 5 years from any from the usual categories of site, including allocated sites. So those with planning permission, those one of the categories will be allocated sites, and you're not then limited to sites allocated in this plan if there are saved sites from the SANDEV which are all together development plan rather than local plan, development plan sites.
Thanks, that's helpful. There was other points raised about viability, but I think that might be best dealt with next week when we deal with viability, about the fact that there not been viability tested for the policies in this plan that will affect the DM policies and things that will apply once this plan's adopted. So I think that, do you think that's probably better? Are you happy to deal with that next week under the viability points, or do you want to deal with it now?
Yeah, matter 8, I think it is.
Yeah,
it would seem to be more appropriate to deal with under there.
So that's all my questions in terms of question 8. And then there's the save sites on the policies. The proposals map, we can deal with that. Do you want to?
I can deal with that very briefly. If you look at Regulation 9, what's required is illustrate geographically the application of the policies in the adopted development plan. And again, the development plan will include the safe SANDEV sites. So it's not a policies map peculiar to this local plan, it's a policies map that deals with the development plan.
Yeah. And then the final question is whether the proportion of housing supply coming from the safe sites is sound, and whether the deliverables, so that's a bit of a crossover between, I think, with things that I think we've already touched on just now. Is there anything particularly you wanted to comment on that? Okay, so that's kind of focused on a few points that we had, and I'll now go around the table and I'll bring you in like we did before when it seems appropriate. Who's first? Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Mrs. Crosby, and you in fact preempted a lot of what I was going to say, but just to add to that, I think it's important to note that this is a big issue, and by that I mean big in terms of the number of sites it relates to. There's about 7 pages of them, I think, in Appendix 2 to the development plan. There's a lot of sites are being carried forward here, and big also in terms of numbers. My computer has unhelpfully just switched itself off, so I've not now got the number in front of me, but it's somewhere between a quarter and a fifth, I think.
It's just to find you a...
It's between a quarter and a fifth of the housing supply is coming from SANDEV sites, so it is a big number, and the confirmation we've just had is that the reassurance you're provided with in terms of whether those sites are deliverable is GC4J. And without going into the detail of GC4J, I would invite you, Mrs. Crosby, to look at that document in detail and make sure you're satisfied that the detail it goes into is satisfactory. From our hearing statement, you'll be aware that we've expressed concerns in terms of the level and depth of evidence provided, and whether you should be persuaded that the sites it lists are coming forward in the manner and to the extent that it says they are. That's.
Thank you. Do the council want to respond, or shall I carry on round the room? See who else? Anybody else? Is Mr. Fox next? Is there anybody before there that I can't see? No? Okay. I feel like I'm at a kind of auction or something. Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mrs. Crosby. Just a fairly brief point, but we've looked at the council's statement, hearing statement, and they draw reference to two other local plans which have come forward, safe sites. Those are, I think it's Field or Field, and I pronounce that, and Shropshire. They're distinct in our view. They're different scenarios because they're partial reviews of adopted plans which cover the same period, and they cover the same spatial strategy. What in this case now is a new plan. It's a partial review because they're saving the sites, but the plan is being extended significantly, and also the spatial strategy is changing from effectively rural to urban focused. So there's two fundamental differences. I think in terms of how it's factored into the plan and how they're approached, is that as effective, it does provide of completions, commitments, being built into that framework. So they happen through the SA process. The point for myself is that there's a considerable portion, I think it's 7%, which is referred to in the council statement. That 7% is without planning permission, and then for over 2,000 dwellings. I think it's that specific portion of the sites which that should be examined through this process. Those secured permission since 2015, so that's a 7-year window. It's a significant period when the housing market has been strong, and we have a new spatial strategy, we have a new sustainability assessment with a new site scoring mechanism. It's that specific portion which we consider should be examined through stage 2 of this examination. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. I'll ask the council to come back.
I suppose the only point I would make on that one is obviously those the saved sites, the proposed sites that Mr. Fox refers to that don't have a planning approval on them, obviously continue to be included within an up-to-date development plan, or at least in the view of the council, an up-to-date development plan as of today. And I can't give you a number, but there will be many of those which will be working through an application, potentially working up an application on that point at the moment. I think it would, generally speaking, I think it's unhelpful to be reviewing those in the context of providing clarity and certainty to the development industry.
I just the was based at I think it was March 2019. In the intervening two years, I think some of those dwellings now benefit from planning permission. So it does show the progress in bringing forward those types and their implementation.
So it's 1,000 now without planning permission.
So have benefited from planning permission. So I think we're at
It's around 2,600, isn't it? Sorry, 2,340 don't currently have planning permission. We've got 830 listed on multi-phase sites. For instance, the West Estuary in Shrewsbury, where the first phase is under development, very large site, is inevitably going to come forward over a number of years. And a further 788 are actually currently subject to planning permission applications as we speak, which includes the Temple Gateway site for 500 dwellings.
And I would just point out as well, obviously, that information is used in our 5-year supply estimations as well. So it's that kind of information around the certainty around the delivery of those particular those areas which are included in our supply statement.
Thank you. You mentioned a number of 1,000 there. Was that what you were saying? The previous year there was nearly 3,000, and within a year 1,000 got planning permission. Is that right?
That's something like 2 years. That was to question 8 and matter 3. We didn't specifically compare how many were included within that category in Appendix 5 of the results in terms of where sites are at in terms of planning permissions or documented, so that should hopefully help.
Thank you, that's helpful. Maybe, is it Mr. James next? Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Crosby. Hello, James from Nexus Planning, acting for Lands Improvement Holdings. Our thoughts on this matter relate to the soundness issues of consistency with national policy due to the approach of rolling forward some of these safe sites. Paragraph 122 of the NPPF requires planning policy to reflect changes in demand for land, to be informed by regular reviews, and if justified, for reallocate land for more deliverable uses to meet identified needs. So many of these safe sites come from the core strategy, whilst they are rolled forward to the standard, but this core strategy was adopted over 11 years ago, and the evidence base for that goes even further back, sort of 14, 15 years. It's important to note that some of the safe sites are mixed-use applications, so they're not all residential or purely residential developments. So the evidence informing the local plan review does not reconsider whether the approximate provision of figures for the safe sites remains appropriate in accordance with the current demand for land. So at the very least, the deliverability of the proposed land uses within the safe sites, and that's employment as well as housing, should be reviewed in the context of current demand. We've heard a bit earlier about the misalignment of employment land and housing land, and I'm sure that'll be something discussed in a lot more detail later in this examination stage. But just in terms of the safe sites, there is an opportunity to rebalance some of those misalignments in a sustainable manner, potentially through, say, readjusting what is allocated on these sites in accordance with paragraph 122 of the NPPF, so the sort of approach of moving them straight forward without considering that, in our view, is inconsistent with national policy. My client is an example where we can put forward an argument at stage 2 of the examination based on what we've put in representations on that, but I'm happy to leave that to stage 2.
Thank you, Mr. James. The council want to respond on any? I think some of the points that you've already addressed.
I'll come back very briefly. It's just in response to Mr. James. Obviously, he's representing Land Improvement Holdings, and I will say the council and Land Improvement Holdings have been working very well together over a number of years in the delivery of the SUE, which is literally a stone's throw away from this area where we are now, and we've delivered over 900 houses on that site already, and we are beginning to see the delivery of the proposed employment land on that area as well. So in a nutshell, we haven't seen any evidence that we would say would require us to, I suppose, review the land use on that particular site. And in fact, we have a planning application in front of us at the moment for commercial use on part of the allocated employment land on that particular site, which would indicate to me that there is a commercial need for land on that land requirement for commercial uses on that site.
Thank you. Are there any other... Sorry, I can't remember your name.
Yes, thank you, Martin. Samuel Chung, representing the Berwick estate. It's coming back to question 8, Martin. There's been a lot of talk about the rural focus versus the urban focus, and we're told that the idea here is a more urban focus. You will have seen our representations where we make the point that with the rollover of the saved sites, what you end up with is rolling forward sites from a previous rural strategy where only about 22% of the saved sites are actually in Shrewsbury. And we know that Shrewsbury is the top of the settlement hierarchy, it's the strategic centre. So our concern is that the council has missed an opportunity to focus more on Shrewsbury and what Shrewsbury can deliver. And in particular, they've failed to have proper regard to the change in circumstances on the ground. And what we're particularly interested in here, Ma'am, is the Northwest Relief Road, which is going to go around Shrewsbury. And this is sort of bleeds into your question 1 about the NPPF and whether the policy is consistent with paragraphs 20 to 23 of the framework. And you'll know, Ma'am, that paragraph 22 talks about being alive to the opportunities which are provided by new infrastructure. So we have a major piece of infrastructure which is being proposed here, and yet the council doesn't appear anywhere in the plan to have given thought to what opportunities that provides to bring a greater focus to bear upon Shrewsbury, and whether this gives an opportunity to deliver more housing within Shrewsbury, and thereby truly give effect to what they say is an urban focus for this plan. And we'll come back to that when we come to matter 8 and the other reasons why it's very important to allocate more land at Shrewsbury, because some of the sites that are allocated are not delivering or won't deliver in time. And we'll come back to that when we come to matter 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chung. The council want to respond on that point, particularly the North West Relief Road.
Thank you, Inspector Crosby. Yes, we do want to come back on that. I think this came up in a conversation on Tuesday. Yes, yeah, I am losing track of time. On Tuesday, I believe, about, I think, in relation to one of your specific questions you had on the day about are there any allocations, proposed allocations within the plan reliant on the North West Relief Road? And the answer to that question, is yes, there is. There is a site, or in our view, there is, which is a site at Ellesmere Road, SHR1. Yes, thank you. So that, I think, shows filthy that we are alive to the issue of a proposed major piece of infrastructure and the impact that could have on the opportunity for new development in the vicinity. There are other references to the North West Relief Road within the Shrewsbury specific policy S16, which specifically talk about the potential for commercial opportunity on land between the current urban area and the proposed line of the North West Relief Road. So I think those two proposals clearly show that we have been alive to that potential opportunity.
Thank you. As in the North West Relief Road still haven't got planning permission. It's in the...
That is correct. Yes, as we said the other day, we are expecting the committee on that to be later on this year. It's a large planning application. Yeah. It's obviously a major planning application for Shrewsbury, and it is expected that it will go later on this year for a determination.
Thank you, Mr. West. Is there anybody I've missed? As we've got Mr. Green. Sorry, did I miss you?
You haven't missed me. I only just put my hand up. To Charles Green from CPRE again, just to plug again our Appendix 1 from our Matter 4 submission, which summarises the numbers on housing and employment. It has anticipated one of your questions on commitments. That shows that the Council's new schedule of the numbers, housing numbers, in their housing topic paper, which is GC4I, figure 18, pages 77 to 79, so that the evidence in front of this inquiry is that there were 2,600 houses in those commitments. That schedule also shows the difference between their schedule, their Appendix 5 in the draft plan, and that shows that 964 houses have subsequently had planning permission since that Appendix 5. 964 houses from the SANDEV figures have subsequently had planning permission or have been built out. So that just is a helpful summary which might assist.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Is there anybody else I missed? No. Okay, so that concludes what was the morning session. Although we were a little bit, but not too bad, I don't think. When I woke up this morning, I did wonder how it was all going to pan out. It's not as bad as it could have been. So what I suggest now is, just take care of advice. Do you want everybody to move away and you reset it, or would you just want the people who are not sitting this afternoon to... Right. So there's a few people who are not down to appear this afternoon. So if we give you a few minutes to clear your desk and leave. So yeah, if you can clear your desk and leave, and then you can sit in the audience if you want to have to go home and listen, but you just have to have a seat at the side.
No, I was going to ask, are we going to move on to question number 26 first?
Yes, we'll do that first when we've reconvened, so we need to get this kit at the table, yeah. So we'll reseat the people for this afternoon.
If I could just have the nameplates of the people that aren't participating this afternoon, I can drop them on my desk.
And if you can take your nameplate back to Kerry if you're not participating this afternoon as well.
Stay where they're seated, that's fine.